All right, so we just cruised into 2026. This year, it's going to be big. But let's check out some of the AI happenings. First and foremost, this is somebody that's working for Google DeepMind. His name is Ronak Mald. So he's from Stanford doing reinforcement learning at Google DeepMind, previously doing research at Windsurf, which was, of course, acquired by DeepMind. Actually, there's like three different companies that either acquired or tried to acquire Windsurf. But whatever the case, Ronak is saying this 2024 was the year of the agents. 2025 was the year of reinforcement learning. 2026 will be the year of continual learning. Now, tons of people had an issue with that whole thing about 2024 being the year of the agent. And obviously,
Yeah, especially because it started being pushed to the public in 2025. But yeah, there you have it in research. And we just saw from the other video that DeepSeek spent more time in the, I think it was the reinforcement phase. And so, yeah, he's actually referring to research. So here we're gonna see the progress with continual learning, and most likely next iterations would have this implemented.
with that whole thing about 2024 being the year of the agent. And obviously, it depends if we're talking, frontier development research or we're talking adoption, being put into actual use cases. But whatever, that's not even the point of the tweet. The point of the tweet is that 2026 will be the year of continual learning. In November of this year, Google Research published this, introducing nested learning, a new machine learning paradigm for continual learning. So notice this is Ali Barouz. So you'll be seeing that name quite a bit moving forward, most likely. Here he is getting absolutely swarmed at one of the machine learning conventions, talking about this nested learning. He was also behind the Titans architecture. So it definitely seems like Google has someone that's really focusing their time and attention on building out all the different architecture to make these machines, this machine learning, to be better doing these tasks. And it does
Machine learning, machine learning.
seem like they're mimicking how biology did it with human brains. From the nested learning blog post, they're saying that as great as the machine learning and LM progress has been, a few fundamental challenges persist.
So here, this means that there's a dead end. Okay, this is not intelligent. This is the dead end. There's so much sunk into it at this point. They're gonna need to do. They're gonna need to be able to mimic as close as possible to it. And if they're able to replace 10%, 20%, even 10%, 5%, it's gonna be a big ass win. It's gonna be a big ass win.
Especially around the continual learning, the ability for a model to acquire new knowledge and skills over time without forgetting the old ones when it comes to
And this is the challenge for the intelligence part of artificial intelligence.
continual learning and self improvement. The human brain is the gold standard. It adapts through neuroplasticity. And that's the thing, while these large language models, they have a lot of like knowledge that they can rely on, they don't really have the ability to quickly learn new facts, skills, information to adapt. You can think of it as crystallized intelligence versus fluid intelligence. Fluid intelligence in humans, at least, is usually at its highest when we're younger. That's what allows us to quickly adapt to new situations, to learn from limited interactions with some new environment or some new puzzle or whatever that may be. Whereas crystallized intelligence is kind of drawing on your previous knowledge to be able to figure out what to do next. I think it's safe to say that's probably more common in older people. They can draw a lot on their past experience. So these large language models are kind of like grumpy old people. They don't do too well with anything new. They've lost their childlike wonder. How do we fix this? Well, if we're looking at the human brain, there's a solution: neuroplasticity, the remarkable capacity to change its structure in response to new experiences, memories, and learning. And so the paper, the nested learning, as far as I can tell, kind of my interpretation of it is this: we have the short term memory, or at least that's the equivalent of what it would be in the human brain. This is what allows you to listen to a story that somebody's telling you and not kind of lose track of the progress, hopefully, but then you probably won't recall a lot of the details, let's say, in 10 days or in 20 days. But as you go throughout your life, there's certain things that you do need to kind of store in that long term memory. So you can think of that as kind of this other loop that's a little bit slower. There's less things that get stored in there. It doesn't update quite as fast. So you can think of it as kind of a quickly moving short term memory that is very, short term, updates fast, and gets kind of like erased and reset pretty quickly. And then you have the long term memory where you store things that you need, for the long haul. And so in these large language models, we've had this short term memory that's kind of like the context window, right? If you upload a bunch of documents and you ask it questions, it's going to be able to kind of remember what the documents are about and then answer your questions. There's only so much that it will hold in that short term memory at any given time. And no matter how important that information is, it will never get stored to its long-term memory. Now, of course, a lot of these chatbots, they do have workarounds. They do have memory where some of your conversations, they kind of get summarized, kind of get stored like almost in a different file where it's like, remember this about this person. They like these things, whatever. But that's almost like a kind of like a hack. It's like a pseudo long-term memory. It's a workaround. What I believe Google DeepMind is doing here, what they're talking about is building something that's a little bit more, quote unquote, real, permanent. This long-term memory where you store important things. And the paper also goes into some detail about what important might mean. They kind of describe how do we sort of mathematically represent what's important, what's not. And as an example, one of the things that they've talked about is surprise. Surprise is a kind of the difference between your world model, how you perceive the world to be, and how it actually is. So when you're surprised by something, you have to kind of update your beliefs. And usually that means storing something in the long term memory. So, for example, if I told you that honey is made out of flower nectar, you're probably not that surprised. But if I told you that bees drink that nectar, it's kind of digested and then regurgitated into these little honeycomb looking things so that, the water evaporates and it thickens. It's basically bee puke. That delicious honey we all like, they put it into those little bare bottles because they don't want you thinking about what it actually is. And if you didn't know this before, there's a chance that we've just taken something from your short term memory, right? So as you're watching this video, you'll remember some things, you'll forget some things. But if you didn't know about this bee regurgitation, and that's where honey comes from, likely we took that thing from your short term memory, we put it into your long term.
I would be very interested to see how this would be exploitable. Would you be able, well, first of all, would this be confined to your own session with the model, or would this be integrated to the model as a whole? You could have the same poisoning tactics and just try to make the model remember things that aren't true.
Term memory. Now, next time you're at a party and somebody brings up honey, you can actually, regurgitate this fact for them because it's important. It surprised you at the time that you've heard it, and now it's stored in your long term memory. So, if this or something like it is indeed what Google DeepMind is working on, and 2026 will be the year of continual learning, that certainly seems like a big, big deal. The lack of continuous learning is seen by many as a big stumbling block for these large language models. If you recall that whole thing where people would ask it if there's such a thing as a seahorse emoji, these are some of the things you would get. I think some of it has been patched, but at the time it was absolutely hilarious because this large language model would erroneously think that there's a seahorse emoji and say, yes, of course, here it is, a horse. Then it kind of realizes it's not right, kind of tries to backtrack. It's like, oh, well, no, okay, so it's more like this, puts a unicorn and a starfish, realizes that's wrong, goes, oh, just kidding, here's the real one. Nope, not this, and not this. Okay, nope, still wrong. Here it is for real. And then just outputs a whole string of different emojis. That's not it. It's got the little sweaty, laughing uncomfortably.
So we saw why this happened. Some people on the subreddit of the Mandela effect um, posted that there's a bunch of people that posted saying that they do remember the seahorse emoji, and there were also other emojis such as the orange cone and some others. And so you could have effectively the same um, issue with continuous learning, just a whole bunch of people uh, saying that they do remember like the seahorse existing, and maybe there's enough people that would be able to poison the model because of that. Because I mean, people aren't gonna discuss a lot about the seahorse emoji not existing, right? It just didn't exist, so people don't talk about it. But people who did remember it, they talk about
The
it. So
face and goes, okay, okay, jokes aside, here's the real seahorse emoji. Nope, that's a seal. Nope, that's a shrimp. And it would go on like this for quite some time. When the various large language models were playing Pokemon, when Claude did it, and GPT-5 and Gemini 3, they also kept doing the same silly mistakes. You'd think at some point they'd kind of figure it out, but there wasn't anything that they had to update their beliefs or update their knowledge. They could write things down, but that's not quite the same as, learning something on the fly. There was a movie called Memento that was kind of about this, a person that couldn't form any memories kind of past a certain point, so no short-term memories were getting sent to the long-term memory. So he had to actually just jot things down, even tattoo things on himself so that he would remember what he's trying to do. And with a lot of these goofy things that large language models do, it kind of seems similar. Like, unless it has a little sticky note somewhere that tells it something obvious that it learned, 2 minutes ago, it might keep.
that's the thing. Did you learn it, or do you have to look it? You have to look at it on a sticky note. Is the sticky note gonna stay there forever, or is it gonna become part of the information? Because it doesn't change the way that they need to train the models. They said that once the model is trained, it's trained, right?
Blindly stumbling into that thing over and over again. The ability to kind of figure out what data is important, what learnings or details, which ones are important, and then permanently adding it to its knowledge base, to its weights, however they do that, that seems like a big, big deal. It certainly could be. It could solve a lot of the issues that we're having today. If this is where things are going, if this.
I mean, if it's just a thing about volume, you could effectively run a bot farm interacting with the model and just have it spew a whole bunch of nonsense. I'm really curious to learn how they're gonna implement continual learning if they put safeguards around what they can learn. We already saw that safeguards aren't good for shit, with Grok producing very undesirable images.
Is correct, and 2026 will be the year of continual learning. Number one, I think Google's going to do pretty well. And number two, notice that they're publishing a lot of this information. They're sharing their research publicly. And I think we got to give them some credit for that because, of course, they were the original attention is all you need paper publishers. They've created the transformer architecture. They, you could say, really kind of kicked off this AI revolution that we're seeing. And here it is, they're publishing this proof of concept new design called Hope. It's a variant of the Titans architecture. The Titans architectures are long term memory modules that prioritize memories based on how surprising they are, right? So, honey is bee puke. Ah, I didn't know that. I'll keep that in mind. You will remember this video next time you have honey, believe me. Now, on top of that, Titan's architecture, what Hope is adding, Hope is a self modifying recurrent architecture that can take advantage of unbounded levels of in context learning and also is augmented with CMS blocks to scale to larger context windows. So it can essentially optimize its own memory through a self referential process, creating an architecture with infinite looped learning levels.
We saw what happens whenever AI does infinite shit. I think this speaks a little bit for itself. This looks pretty infinite to me. That sounds like a great plan.
So Titans was published in December 2024. So just about almost exactly 1 year ago. And this paper we're looking at now, that was roughly 11 months after that. So I must see Titans as more of a file drawer, right? So, oh, this is important, I'll file away. And you keep filing important things away based on some criteria, right? So if it's important, you file it into the file cabinet for later use. This new Hope architecture is different. It's infinite looped learning levels, as they put it here. So not only is it filing things away, but it's continuously shuffling and reorganizing and adding and forgetting. That's the important part, I think, because certain long term memories, it's okay to forget them if you're not referencing them quite as often. So if they're not that important, they should fade away over time.
Well, wouldn't that make it susceptible for like a bot farm attack? And also, I mean, it's very interesting that you're using analogies like that to help visualize these different concepts. But the thing is, this personifies these models and it just keeps the lie going on.
Get replaced with new ones. So the human brain, I think, is exactly what they're describing here, right? It's infinite looped learning levels. So in 2024, we really had no long term memory. By 2025, we had the Titans. So this idea of filing it away into a filing cabinet. And now as we're entering 2026, we have kind of this next level, at least, on paper, this research showing us that we can have something more akin to the human brain with its continuous learning. So wild times ahead. In other news, we finally kind of know what the new OpenAI
Oh,
device
no freaking way. No freaking way. All right.
will look
A
like. It will
pen.
be a pen, or at least a pen shaped device that integrates AI, aiming to become a third core device following the iPhone and the Mac. So you can carry it in a pocket, you can wear it around your neck. It will feature a microphone and a camera to perceive and understand the user's surrounding environment. Interestingly, it will be able to convert handwritten notes directly into text and instantly upload them to ChatGPT. This is kind of interesting. So if you have a pen, you can
Yeah, handwritten notes. That's pretty interesting. From my understanding, cursive is very hard to handle for these models. So is it really gonna be able to handle everything? Uh,
just jot down your notes. It doesn't even have to be a real pen. As long as you're jotting it down, you can kind of like just transcribe it as you're writing it. So, one, it'll be interesting to see how useful it is, what it looks like, also how the reception to it is going to be. Again, something that has a camera and a microphone that could potentially be recording all the time. Certainly, people don't necessarily like seeing that in public. Sometimes, if I hold up my phone, if I'm out somewhere, I hold my phone like this as I'm reading something or looking at it. People will look at me weird if they think that I'm recording them. We've certainly heard some people attacked back in the days of Google Glasses or whatever they were called, the ones that would record or at least have the ability to record just by, having it on your face. So that's a whole separate thing that we're going to have to kind of deal with. How well is this going to be received by the public at large? Interesting bit of news also. This is from the information.com. OpenAI ramps up audio AI efforts ahead of device. So this is the device we're talking about. It looks like there's going to be its own special model that's going to be powering this device. So the device is largely going to be audio based. It sounds like this new audio model is a lot better than the previous one. The previous one, I got to say, is pretty good. There's a little bit of a problem with how it handles interruptions because sometimes you almost have to start speaking and get through the first few words before it stops. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, whenever somebody sends me to the store to pick something up, I'm sure we've all had that experience, and they'll tell me, okay, get items 1, 2, and 3. Make sure item 3 is this specific type. I already habitually I always answer the same thing. I'm like, text me what you need, or it's not happening. Coming back to our diagram of the short term and the long term memories, in people with ADHD, if this is the short term memory, it kind of looks like that. So whatever you told me to get from the store, it's already gone. So definitely something that's intelligently able to remind you of things like that. I mean, if it's really fully fleshed out, it's very effective, it's very good. I can see that being a huge help to a great number of people. It can definitely help people that struggle with certain things, struggle with memory. It can help the elderly, make sure they turn the fire off on the stove before they leave the house, something like that. It can help people that are forgetful, remind them of certain things. They can kind of quickly jot down notes. The ability to speak into, to quickly take notes. There's less friction of doing that. And with AI, its ability to kind of figure out what's important, what's not, makes it easier for actually, getting that information back to you when you need it. And even if you're one of those people that just is always on top of everything and you're just running a life, in which case good for you, have a cookie, I don't know. But even then, I feel like there will be some marginal benefit to having a device like this. Again, once it's working really, really well with no issues, I'm finding myself reaching more and more for now I use ChatGPT and Gemini 3. How much I use that model, the usage has really went up quite a bit since Gemini 3 got released. It's surprisingly good at a lot of things. I've seen an acquaintance of mine that has to deal with a person that has a certain personality disorder, some condition, some divergence, whatever you want to call it. I'm just going to say it's BPD. That person has BPD. You might know it from TV shows like The Sopranos. So Tony's mother has that personality disorder, and probably the sister too. By the way, Eminem, Marshall Mathers, apparently his mom, same thing. Anyways, there's a few personality disorder in that kind of a cluster, borderline, and narcissism, etc. That can be hard to diagnose. It can be hard to deal with. It can be extremely unpredictable, very damaging. I had a good friend of mine, acquaintance, somebody that I knew for quite some time that was dealing with somebody with the BPD in their life and oftentimes really struggling with it. But recently with the Gemini 3, they were able to, put some of the conversations and some of the things that were happening into Gemini 3 and kind of get some insights into why they were happening. And I was really blown away by how well that worked. Oftentimes, if there's some narcissistic rage or borderline rage, whatever you want to call it, it comes out as a very toxic thing. And it's hard to keep your cool and it's hard to understand why it's happening because it usually seems disconnected from a reality. As I say here, it's like intense or inappropriate anger that seems out of proportion to the situation at hand. So if you're on the receiving end of it, you're like, I don't know what is happening. I don't know where this is coming from. It's really bad for relationships. And what I saw kind of happening firsthand, I don't know if it's firsthand because it was between two other people. I was just kind of observing it, or at least this person, friend of mine, that was able to put it into Gemini 3 to get some insights into what's happening. And it very clearly outlined exactly what was going on. So it took out all the anger, frustration, all the toxicity, and really broke it down kind of like the root cause of what was happening. Now, of course, this could be really abused using a Gemini 3 to psycho-diagnose other people can be a problem, can cause issues. In this particular case, used intelligently, used carefully, used by somebody that did a lot of research. They understand the condition. I mean, they get what they're doing. They're just using this as almost like a dictionary. Like what I saw was night and day difference because of how easy it became to deal with that situation. I've tested this with some other situations to try to see how different people, especially if they're neurodivergent or you want to call it, or even if they had some events in their past that maybe are shaping how they behave, giving something like Gemini 3, and I have tested this with other models. They're okay, they're good. Gemini 3 currently stands alone in its ability to get the kind of insight that I've seen, but it's incredibly incisive at how it cuts to the root of the issue. You gotta give it enough context. And once you
That's the thing. This is a little scary. I mean, people are already starting to turn towards that. I've seen posts about people just asking for relationship advice and describing their fights with their significant other. I mean, that's crazy, right? And as he mentioned, for it to work for you or to have the result that you want, you have to give it context. You have to give it a lot of context. And this is why this these personal interactions with the platform is the most valuable next step. This is why there's Chrome extensions that are effectively stealing that, but it's written in their terms and conditions. So I guess it's fine. But they're stealing your chat conversations because this is the most valuable. It is valuable for them. They're going to use that to train next models and they're going to mimic better. It's going to feel more human, but it's not. It's not. It's all based on the same 2017 paper. There's
They
nothing
do. It
under
can
the sun.
really help navigate.
Why has it not all changed the world in 2024, 2025? Why do we need more for it to change the world? Right? Because it might not happen.
Some of the more like turmoil parts of the relationships, understand other people's viewpoints. What we were talking about is the OpenAI's their new device and audio model. Where it could be useful is for relationship advice, especially if you're dealing with something difficult.
Bro, that is wild that you're saying that. That is pretty wild. Don't say that. It's not meant for that. Fuck.
Obviously, there's all sorts of privacy and ethical concerns. Should you be recording a fight that you're having with a family member or a significant other? Probably not, at least, not without their consent. But from my current perspective, I'm sure all of you had the situation where you're interacting with somebody and you completely just don't understand where they're coming from. Like you can't even believe that they are acting the way they are, or they believe the things that they do. Like their behavior or their words seem disconnected from reality. I've recently, just in the last 3, 4 months, have seen Gemini 3 specifically able to kind of translate what's happening. That if you give enough context about the person and what's going on, it can often kind of shine the light on.
But doesn't that mean that whenever you do that, you put in your own bias into the prompt? We saw that the models are, embedded with inherent biases because of the data that was used to train them, because of the people working onto training it. Um, you're telling me that you're going to be able, especially with a fight with a significant other or a family member, you're telling me that you're going to be able to provide an objective uh, account of the situation? This makes no sense. It has no value there. It has nothing to do with that. Talk with people. Talk with people.
And why they might be behaving that way. And I've personally kind of went like, wow, it really made me understand why certain behaviors are triggered the way they are. And that's of course like the first step towards understanding and resolving those issues. So there's a lot of power here, but of course also a lot of opportunity for misuse. Anyways, I plan to do a kind of a predictions for 2026. I probably should have been doing it for the last 2 years, but I haven't. But I'm going to start this year, make my predictions for what I think will happen in 2026, then review them at the end of 2026 here live to see what I was right about, what I was wrong about. But I can tell you one of the things will 100% be number one, that we'll have more benchmarks that are testing long term horizon, kind of pursuing tasks over a long term horizon. That usually includes you need the ability to store information to that kind of a long term memory. And this continual learning plays into that perfectly. So I think I'll tell you right now, 2026, we'll see much more interesting benchmarks where these large language models will pursue goals as opposed to just, getting a question correct or incorrect. And my second prediction is that we'll probably at least hear research and things being kind of like rolled out in this area of continual learning. Maybe, hopefully, even see actual utilization in actual large language models that we work with. Maybe we'll see that with Gemini 4 or GPT 6 or Grok 5, Claude 5, whatever it is. Hopefully, we'll maybe even start seeing those being rolled out. And I think that's exactly where we're going to see a massive leap on those benchmarks. So here's a vending bench, for example. So how these large language models, how well they're able to run a vending machine over time. Things like this, I believe, once that continual learning gets perfected, improved, installed, integrated, whatever you want to call it. I think a lot of these benchmarks, which are great, but I think we're going to see them really start to skyrocket with that new ability. I think right now for a lot of these benchmarks, the scaffolding, the stuff that you build around it, really determines how well these large language models are how well they're able to navigate those environments. And it seems like right now, they're little hacks or workarounds because these models don't have that kind of long-term memory updates. If that gets fixed, I think that would be a huge unlock. Anyways, let me know what you think. If you made this far, thank you so much for watching. My name is Wes Roth, and I'll see you in the next one.
Yeah, that was a pretty cool video. I'm not sure I'm 100% with all of it, but it's pretty interesting to see what's progressing.